Hey, it's Keith from Outlaw Speed Shop, and this week I'm having a little fun tackling an M2. This is outside my norm for what I usually do, but I wanted to have some fun. It's Christmas time, and don't worry, it's not a Christmas theme build. It's just something I kind of had a little fun with I've been wanting to do. As always, if you like what you see, make sure you subscribe and don't forget to ring the bell to get notified of all future videos. So I've had this in my collection for maybe a couple years. I think I picked it up at Hobby Lobby or something. I saw it and I was like, that has some potential, but not as it sits. It sits way too high for me. It's too short and squat. Just really wasn't digging it. So after really just taking it apart, which is just a couple screws to hold the cab and one for the base for the bed. If you unscrew, these are weird kind of axle setups. They're glued onto the wheels. So you just have to kind of hold one and spin the other until it pries, the glue loose enough where you can pop it off. But the base is all metal. So there's not in order for me to do what I wanted to do, which is pretty much get this thing on the ground, there was no way I could use the base. So I break out my styrene, and I want to extend it a little bit too, because I want to put something in the bed. So pretty much with the styrene, you can just kind of score it a little bit where you want. You can see my high precision measurement right there, and you'll get to see it again here in a second. Look at that. That's like some laser eye shit right there. But pretty much what I'm going to do is use this. I think it's, I want to say, actually, I'm not gonna lie. I'm really not sure what size it is, but it's square. I want to say it's 1/8 though, if I had to take a wild guess and somebody put a gun to my head. So now, not only do I have to figure out the length, but I have to figure out the width. So I'm going to try to keep it the same, so that way I'm not changing axles too drastically. The issue is in the front, in order to slam this, I kind of need to move the front wheels in just a smidge because it hits the inner wheel well. And I don't mind grinding out stuff, but it was just so close. It was just easier to just narrow the frame just a smidge and then cut the axle, that same amount, very little. And what that does is allows me to tuck those front wheels up in there, no problem. So here I'm just going to square it off, a front piece and a back piece. And there's a lot of little styrene cuts and pieces. I didn't show everything just because it would be monotonous, but it's one of those things that you just have to play around with it and have an idea what you want to do. You're going to make mistakes. I buy the assorted kit along with various tube sizes and stuff. Just gives me some flexibility, and pretty much I always have everything I need. So here you can see kind of what I'm after. I used a piece of brass tubing, 1/8, just to be able, 1/16, just to be able to, actually, no, I'm sorry, I correct myself. These axles are a bit bigger, so I went 3/16 on the axle tubes itself. I want to use the gas tank, so I'm popping those off. Those are just plastic. They were kind of pried into with a couple tabs onto the metal base. So I do a lot of fitting. You can see right here, I'm trying to hit that tab. So I had to add an extra piece to bump up the frame itself, just so that it would sit on that, because that actually gave me the right height that I was looking for. And again, it's hard to explain, and it's kind of hard to show. Hopefully you get the gist of it. If you have any questions, you can ask down below. I'll answer. But for the most part, I don't plan on taking this apart. I'm going to glue everything. There you can see how my wheels are just a smidge too tight. That's what I was talking about. So the only way to fix that really is because they're glued on. It doesn't really matter. You can just snip a little bit off. I think I took maybe 1/8, not even. Just that little bit was all I needed to be able to get that front end sitting in there and those wheels to turn, which was perfect. It's ideally what I was looking for. So that pretty much set my ride height for the whole vehicle. And since it worked out, I can do my rear axle at the same height and not have to worry about it. I've got this I've had kicking around. I was going to use it for something else. I wanted to use the 2 motors and put it behind the cab. The only issue with this, and it's not really an issue, is just that the base is metal, which holds the exhaust, and then obviously the chrome was plastic. So to make the two work, I have to cut them both and put them together that way. Not a big deal. It's just an extra step. And, it's just one of those things that I could have done 2 individual motors. I have other cars that have multiples of that have probably cooler motors. My purpose in doing this and a lot of the customs that I do is, I use some 3D printed parts on occasion, but I like to change it up and eventually, when the build is done, be able to say I built it with stock parts. And by stock parts, I mean, maybe multiple castings, but I mean, you can go and buy this M2. You can go and buy the Hot Wheels casting with the dual motors and it already put together. If you have availability to 3D parts and you want to spend the money, great. I have 4, 5, 6, 7 motors kicking around that are 3D printed. But again, it doesn't show. I just want to be able to show anybody can kind of do this if they got stuff kicking around. So as you can see, I'm keeping the radiator shell. It doesn't really do anything except for space it away from the cab. And you're not going to see the actual radiator itself, just the housing. So once you take the gas cans off, the fuel tanks, you got to just kind of grind them smooth a little bit. The side that's actually on the frame rails is pretty beat up from the way it's stuck onto, or the little tabs are actually stuck into the metal on the original M2 casting. So you just sand them down with either file or sanding sticks or both. Sandpaper works well. I just wanted something, a flat surface to be able to mate to the actual styrene that's the frame on my new frame, actually, should I say. Hope you guys are having a good what's left of this holiday season here. As I'm recording this, it's a few days before Christmas. I know this year has kind of sucked balls, so hopefully Christmas isn't horrible by yourself alone. But anyways, that's my way of saying happy holidays. So for the back, I want to cover the axles. The front, the cab covers it. So I'm just going to pretty much just make a cut and put that same size styrene on both sides of the axles, and then I'm going to put a piece over it to cover it. So instead of trying to notch out a piece, it's just easier to do it in 2 pieces on each side. And it's just going to do it's pretty much a surround, essentially, for the actual axle itself. And it just makes it easier for what I want to do. And at this point, to be honest, I didn't know, and I'm still not 100% happy with it. I didn't really have a plan in mind. I had a plan for the front end, and it came out perfect. It's exactly what I wanted. I had a plan for the dual motors. It came out exactly how I wanted it. When it came to the back, I didn't have a freaking clue. I'm standing there staring at it. Like 3 days, I kept looking at it. I go downstairs and look at it. I'm like, nope, that's not it. Then I go back downstairs. Nope, that ain't going to work. I just really, at this stage, I just wanted to build up around the actual axle. I didn't have a plan per se. And it kind of worked out, but it's just one of those things I kind of was going along and winging it as usual. The front radiator support and the radiator itself was a little off height-wise, so I had to fill it with some styrene. That's all I was doing previously. And then once I get everything together and sturdy, I sand it all down, file off the rough edges. Then I use this putty to kind of smooth everything over. And everything else at this point, I got to say it, lead belcher. This is the paint I'm using. I'm mixing it with a little bit of water so it goes a little bit thinner. And it gives it an more even coat. Sometimes you have to put it on twice. That's all. Here I didn't prime. It's got a black primer, the Chaos Black from Citadel. If I had gone maybe with a lighter primer like a gray, I probably could have got away with 1 coat, but thinning it out helps, and it's just not clumpy, and it spreads it much, much easier. It's goes on like butter. So I did the gas, the fuel tanks, and then I'm going to do the exhaust as well. And again, 2 coats if you have to. Sometimes you miss something, you go back, so it's just as easy to put a 2nd coat all the way through. I am trying to experiment out on different paints. I know I use a lot of Citadels, but it just seems to work. So here again with the lead belcher, I'm going to dry brush. You can see I put a piece of simulated corrugated steel for the bed over the rear axle. And this is kind of where I was just going to leave it. And in hindsight, maybe I should have. I don't know. And I thought about putting this big honking wing on the back. And I don't know. It's just You know, sometimes you get to a certain point in a project, you're like, ah, screw it, I'm just going to do something. So I've got the original bed. I can't use the metal that it came on, so I pried it off, and it's the faux wood bed that's made out of the same ugly green plastic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shorten that, and I'm going to tub the wheels so that it fits over the actual dualies in the back, and I'm going to set that over that. So I'm going to break out my handy dandy Dremel tool, which is the greatest thing in the world for me. Pretty much cut everything smooth. Then I'm going to notch out where the wheels are going to go with my, if you saw me measuring there. No, you didn't, because I didn't. And then I'm going to take some Vallejo brown. I'm sorry, I think that was Army paint. I don't know. I'll let you know. But mixing a little bit of brown with just a smidge of white to lighten it up a little bit. And I'm pretty much going to use that with some water, and I'm going to paint the bed. So you can see I shortened it, and in the end, what I did is I took the part that I cut off and then cut the tailgate off and re-glued it back on so it's shorter. And you can see the wheel cutouts there as well. And again, it's nothing fancy. It was kind of an afterthought of how I was going to do this. And the Agrath Earthshade, which is a Citadel wash, it's a brown tint to it. It's like a dirty brown. So if you want something that's already, you want something kind of dirty, you can use the Agrath Earthshade. If you want something kind of oily, you use the Nuln Oil. So they're both good washes, but being wood and brown, the Agrath Earthshade worked out perfectly. It sits in the crevices, and it just gives a little bit of definition and a little bit of depth, I guess you can say, instead of just a kind of khaki brown looking flat color. So it adds a little bit of depth. So this is pretty much what I started with. Looks awesome. I love it, but it just sits way too high for my style, and it makes the bed just look squat, I guess is the word that I could probably best describe it. After all the detail painting, this is what I came up with. It was fun. It was just one of those things. I just put it on the bench and went to town. I didn't think about anything. I didn't paint it. I kind of like the army green. So I went with it. I did some details around the wheels and stuff. Other than that, that's what I ended up with. I hope you guys like it. I hope you have a great holiday, and I'll catch you on the next one.